have come a long way in the business world, but there's still ground to be made up. Today, we take a look at one program that's focused on increasing the number of women in its senior ranks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we're going to talk about your Advancement of Women initiative, but one of the things that I find really interesting is that it was not a strong start. The evolution of this program included a real stall at the beginning. Tell us what happened then and how you got through it to now.
I think that is a fair thing to say. This isn't the first time that Scotiabank has really taken on the whole notion of advancing women into the senior ranks. I would say in the early 90s is probably the first time that a task force really came together to address this matter. But it was unsuccessful in that it was rooted really more so in compliance. As a federally regulated organization, we are accountable to the federal government on reporting for certain designated groups, including women. And so while with it being rooted in compliance, and I think everybody really understood that it made sense, that it was the right thing to do, and perhaps we even appealed to some individuals at the social conscience level. But what it did, it really lacked formal structures, it lacked accountability systems, and so while everybody was doing the head nodding, really progress was virtually non-existent.
So what did you change?
What we changed is, fast forward almost 10 years, in 2003, Scotiabank relaunched its Advancement of Women initiative. It really came together with a bunch of senior women in the organization, and a steering committee, an Advancement of Women steering committee was formed. These women represent the various business lines and key support functions in Scotiabank, and they're the ones that really kind of came together and said, we need to change this. And they formed this steering committee and really undertook some very rigorous internal and external research and put together a business case that was then taken to our president and CEO, Rick Waugh. And it was quite a compelling business case. And I think the real difference, the differentiator between this effort and our prior effort is that it spoke to the business leaders in terms that resonated with them. So it was all in terms of the business and the impact it would have to the organization. It was no longer about compliance. It was no longer about this is the right thing to do. It was a business imperative.
So what would be some examples of how one would measure that, or how one would articulate it in a way that bankers would say, of course it makes sense. It's as good as a foreign exchange deal.
Absolutely. Well, there was a couple of things that really were driving it. I think what the strategy was really based on was on three things: improving business performance, remaining competitive in the war for talent, and really leveraging our existing talent pool. At the time, Scotiabank was comprised, in Canada, 73% of our workforce was women. And yet in the senior ranks, this is in 2003, only 18.9% were in senior management roles. So clearly, there was a huge disparity at that level. We also knew that 50% of small businesses are started by women. We know that 83% of family purchasing decisions are made by women. Women are exiting, are leaving schools with graduate degrees in higher numbers. And we had a lot of research. We had internal research that really showed us that women were less satisfied than their male counterparts. And I think it's pretty well known that employee satisfaction leads to customer satisfaction, which leads to better business performance. And the other piece of external research that I think really supplemented that was the Catalyst organization's own research that really showed that organizations with diverse senior management teams perform better.
Now, there are a bunch of things that go into the strategy here, call them strategic elements. Senior management commitment, an accountability framework, things like mentoring programs and establishing networks. Give me some sense on a tactical level what those types of programs look like.
I'd love to. We knew that mentoring was a critical, really, element in support of career development, an individual's career development. So when it came to mentoring, what our research really told us, and this is internal and it was substantiated with external research, that frankly, women just did not have the opportunity to network to the extent that men did. And when they did, they weren't as comfortable doing so. It's one of the things that the guys just were at a lot longer and did a much better job of. So what we wanted to do was create opportunities for women to have mentors. So through formal mentoring programs, as well as supporting all mentoring relationships by creating what we call an online mentoring toolkit that resides on Scotiabank's internal website. That really helps all employees in all aspects of mentoring relationship, whether it's how to go about finding one, or you're in an existing relationship and you want clarity on roles and responsibilities, duration, what are the do's and don'ts. So really supporting them in several different ways. I would say the formal programs are more entrenched at the business line specific level so that each business can drive to their needs.
Are you in a mentoring relationship?
Informal, yes.
Informal.
Informal.
And what would have you participate in the formal? What would have someone at Scotia participate in one of these formal mentoring programs?
I think it could probably evolve two different ways. Either, I mean, it sounds simplistic enough, but either employee initiated, that is really reaching out to perhaps a female role model, but we also have, women being mentored by men, and, we also encourage that as well. At other times, it's also something that is potentially could emerge during an employee development discussion, where perhaps an employee's leader may table that as an opportunity for them to connect, especially if that employee has indicated a career path in another area of the bank.
Right.
So that manager may actually facilitate connecting that employee up with someone in that part of the organization.
When it comes to establishing networks, does that include network groups that have a name and an online portal or something like that? I know back in my corporate days there was the Women of Product Supply.
Right.
Does Scotiabank endorse those kinds of things?
We do. Again, we really support women's networks in two different ways, I would say. When our strategy launched, one of the things that did evolve from it was the Scotia Women's Networking event. 4 times each year, Scotiabank holds networking events. And those networking events either feature interviews with female executive vice presidents. It could be a panel from a specific business line that really talks about careers that are the different types of careers in that business line, or it could be personal or professional development. Now, the beauty of these networking events, they are webcast globally live. And so invitations go out to all women in the Scotiabank group in all of the 50 countries where we operate at the manager level and above for them to participate. I mean, obviously, if they're in the Greater Toronto area, they can attend in person. And if they're not, they can participate via the global webcast. Now, the other thing that we've done, and I think what's really evolved, and it's really quite amazing, is a lot of grassroots networks have emerged as a result of the corporate one. And so we had developed a network in a box toolkit that's really a how-to for anyone to start their own network. So what we are hearing more and more is that in conjunction with the corporate networks, a bunch of female employees in Mexico City are getting together, they're having their own network, and then they watch the global webcast from Toronto with one another.
Right.
And we know that happens in Calgary, and it's happening in Chile.
It's just a different brand of beer that they have at the event in each place.
Perhaps.
Now, the challenge that women face advancing in senior roles is not unique to Scotiabank. It's not even unique to financial services.
Correct.
It's accounting, it's law, it's manufacturing. What is the hardest thing that you have to deal with that is largely out of your control?
With respect to the Advancement of Women Initiative?
Yes. There are some things that are societal.
There are, and I think in some of the locations, for example, we launched the Advancement of Women Initiative in Canada in 2003. And in the past year, we've just started rolling it out to other countries where Scotiabank operates. And one of the things that I think we have taken into consideration, we absolutely have to respect at every level, are the nuances that exist. Now, sometimes it's a nuance with 2 different business lines that share floor space in Toronto, but there's also the cultural ones. What works in Canada may not work in Mexico. What works in Mexico doesn't work in the Dominican Republic. So we have to, I think, really respect and provide, and we've gone to great lengths to develop and provide a strategy and a blueprint and a framework that will help each country or business line or area stay true to the corporate vision and the mandate while encouraging the local creativity.
Very interesting. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And congrats on your Catalyst Award.
Thank you very much.
Well done.